Welcome to Heaven Awaits. My name is Leigh, and I narrate the near-death experiences of those who have died and have seen the other side. These videos are meant to bring hope to a sometimes hopeless world. If you enjoy these videos, please consider hitting the thumbs up, subscribe, and bell icons to be notified of new content. Doing so is free, and it does help the channel grow. Get comfortable, grab a cup of coffee or tea, and let's dive into today's experiences. When I got out of surgery, it was awful. The pain was unbearable. Although the doctor released me to go home, it turned out they had cut my throat from the inside, and that night, I bled out. I woke up in a puddle of blood, too weak to move my head. My grandfather, my champion, lifted me while my grandmother cleaned me up and dressed me. We had to return to the hospital, and they put me in an old-fashioned white nightgown. The ride to the hospital was 138 miles of hellish, winding country highways. Every turn felt like 10 tons slamming into my limp body. I remember being put on a gurney and watching the fluorescent tube lights flash by overhead. The nurses tried to take my blood pressure, but I had none. Their touch and the doctor's examination caused excruciating pain. I screamed, and that was it. I heard the doctor tell my grandfather, "I'm sorry, we've lost her. She's gone." Suddenly, the pain vanished, and I found myself swimming in a light that was intensely real and loving. My grandfather was leaning over my body, praying to the Great Spirit for my life. I felt more alive in death than I had ever been in that small, weak, sickly suit they call a body. The light being or beings showed me my grandfather praying over my body and asked if I wanted to return to him because I loved him so much. I answered that he'd be with me soon anyway, and I tried to return to playing. I saw my body lying there like a discarded set of dirty clothing. It wasn't me, just the suit I'd been wearing, and not a particularly nice one as it was always sick. I returned to what I'll call the center of the Milky Way, playing in the black hole at its heart. While there, I knew our galaxy was incredibly tiny, not even the size of a grain of sand. I enjoyed the colors and the freedom of movement, experiencing no pain and not worrying about getting water up my nose. The love there was overwhelming, and I never wanted to leave. The light angels forcibly took my soul back to my dead body. I watched the Creator blow the breath of life back into it. Communicating telepathically, I asked the angels why they would do this to me, protesting that the body hurt too much. They responded like a voice in a stadium. "We are sorry, but you haven't finished your job." They granted my wish that I wouldn't feel pain when I awoke. I found my grandfather leaning over my body, crying and praying, with 2 morgue attendants standing at either end of the gurney. The sheet was still over my head. The doctor had placed it there and folded my arms in the traditional position of a corpse. I sat up, and the sheet fell off. My grandfather started shaking me, and I told him, "Get off me, you weigh a ton." I then lost consciousness. When I finally awoke, my grandfather was beside my bed. I was receiving blood transfusions, and he was overjoyed that I was alive. As I had told the light beings, my grandfather did pass away soon after my recovery. 20 years have passed since that incident, and I still haven't figured out what the light beings meant by saying I wasn't finished. Perhaps one day, I will understand. That does it for our first experience, moving right along into our second experience. The following is my near-death experience from 2002, when I was 23 years old and being induced with my second child. This pregnancy felt different from my first. During my first pregnancy, I had experienced feelings of awe, joy, surprise, wonder, and expectation. While I looked forward to meeting my second child, I sensed something was significantly wrong with my body. An unnatural foreboding haunted me. I would flinch each time I drove past my town's 2 funeral homes. While nesting at home, I caught myself thinking, will this be the last time I clean the bathroom? I don't know why I had these thoughts, or what triggered them, but my body and spirit carried a general sense of malaise throughout the entire pregnancy. Like my first child, I was induced. My doctor wasn't particularly attentive. Perhaps he had once been better, but personal struggles had affected his practice. Being on state insurance with limited resources, I had no other medical care options. I reluctantly went to the hospital for my scheduled induction. Although I tried to work toward natural labor, the Pitocin drastically increased my contractions, making it nearly impossible to breathe. I eventually requested an epidural. I remember asking one of the nurses, an Irish woman, if she had ever lost any patients during childbirth. She looked surprised and said no. As the night progressed, my sense of foreboding intensified. When I was dilated enough to push, the doctor arrived, clearly annoyed about leaving his Christmas decorating to deliver my baby. The epidural had left me without solid spatial awareness of my cervix and hips, suggesting I had received too high a dose. Nevertheless, I pushed for several hours and delivered a healthy baby. The doctor, eager to return home, began pulling on my placenta so forcefully that he brought my uterus with it, turning it inside out. What followed was a whirlwind of events. I watched my blood convulsing out of my body at an alarming rate. My doctor's face turned ghostly white with terror. The staff quickly ushered my family out of the room, with my last loving glimpse being of my baby being wheeled away. I turned to my doctor and asked if I was going to die. He indicated yes, or something similar. At that moment, space and time ceased to exist. I began communing with a presence that felt as though it had always been with me, though I was only now aware of it. I bargained with this presence in the most honest and transparent way possible. While I laid out my case with unwavering faith, the presence never explicitly spoke. Instead, it communicated with me through feelings and assurances. I'm unsure how much time passed before I began losing sensation in my body, starting from my toes and moving upward. Halfway through this process, I experienced an overwhelming sense of assurance. I knew, without doubt, that I would survive this ordeal. As the doctors rushed me toward emergency surgery and blood transfusions, I entered a state of complete peace, unlike anything I've experienced before or since. I tried telling the doctors not to worry, that I would be fine, but they seemed not to hear me. Now I'm uncertain whether I actually spoke aloud. My last memory was of my mind separating from my sensationless body. The energy engaging with me felt like it was tucking me into a universal blanket. Although I saw no lights and had no visions, I let go into a dark, infinitely peaceful, and loving embrace. The next thing I knew, it felt as though someone had forced my spirit back into my body. I was strapped to a hospital bed, intubated, and without pain medication. I later learned my heart had stopped multiple times throughout the night, making me too weak for pain medication. I suspect I wasn't truly awake, and perhaps was still outside my body, as no one knew I was conscious. I can't precisely recall how long it took to fully inhabit my body and alert the medical staff. What I do know is that I felt immense gratitude to return to the material realm to raise my children. Unlike most of the medical staff and my family, I wasn't surprised by my survival. That does it for today's experiences. As always, let me know what you thought in the comment section below. Until next time, stay safe and continue to be blessed.